सर्वधर्मस्वरूपिणे अवतार वरिष्ठाय रामकृष्णाय ते नमः। पवित्रं चरितं यस्याः पवित्रं जीवनं तथा पवित्रता स्वरूपिण्यै तस्यै कुर्मो नमो नमः। नमः श्री यतिराजाय विवेकानन्दसूरये सच्चित्सुखस्वरूपाय स्वामिने तापहारिणे। ओम सर्वमंगलमांगल्ये शिवे सर्वार्थसाधिके शरण्ये त्र्यंबके गौरी नारायणी नमोस्तुते। This Sunday being the first Sunday of the month, we will be discussing the Karma Yoga of Swami Vivekananda. Till now we have completed the first chapter of Karma Yoga, Karma in its effect on character. I will give you a 5 minutes brief summary of the chapter, then proceed with the second chapter. According to me, the second chapter should be what is duty. Not each is great in his own place, neither the secret of work. But here it is printed in the 4th chapter, but will follow Swamiji's method of lecture in the way he has lectured in America. So, when he said karma in its effect on character, first we made a distinction of feeling, thinking and willing. Feeling comes to Bhakti Yoga, willing comes to Karma Yoga, and thinking we consider as a Jnana Yoga. Through Karma Yoga, we increase our Ichcha Shakti. Swamiji also explains that in between, taking the example Buddha, Jesus Christ, etc. Now, in its karma, in its effect, the effect has two effects. One is Bahya Phala, one is Antarika Phala. Bahya Phala, the results of action. Antarika Phala is the samskara. So, the goal of Karma Yoga is knowledge. That we should very much remember it. The goal of knowledge, goal of karma is Jnana. Is very important. Otherwise, we end up in doing work. No, we end up in Jnana. And Swamiji says, knowledge is within. Both secular and spiritual knowledge is within. So, to bring that knowledge out, all these blows taken together are called karma. Work, action. Every mental and physical blow that is given to the soul, by which, as it were, fire is struck from it, by which its own power and knowledge are discovered, is karma. Swamiji says, so whatever actions that we perform in this world, both physical and mental, will give a blow to the mind, and through which a fire is struck and the knowledge manifests within. So, Swamiji gives the example of waves dashing against the rocks. If a small droplet dashes against a rock, the noise is not tangibly heard. But if a huge wave comes and dashes against the rock, the noise is very much tangible. We can hear it. So, Swamiji says, millions of droplets makes one wave. In the same way, millions of actions together makes a dash against your character. So, you should be beware and be aware of every action that we do. Hearing a lecture, singing Khandana Bhavamandana, going in an auto, working in the kitchen, every action is a small droplet which creates your character. So, extending, Swamiji says, that's why he gives an example of one example. He says, so much things are going on in this world. So, you see so many actions in this world and so many effects of those actions, big works that are conducted on this earth. So, what is the basis? It's the thought or the will of man. How is this will produced? Due to character. How is this character manufactured? By karma. Karma manufactures a character. That character will have such a will which produces wonderful actions in this world. So, to get that character, we should be beware and be aware of the karma. And Swamiji gives 3 forms of karma. First one is work for work. You begin from work, whatever work actions that comes to your hand, you perform for the sake of work. That's all. That is the first step, work for work's sake. Second step, love of the work. Second step, love. You love that work for the sake of goodness. And the third is the unselfishness or unselfish act or action. But Swamiji says it is very difficult to perform unselfish actions. Begin with selfish actions with a motive of unselfishness and slowly move on and attain a stage. That's why Swamiji says, who is an ideal man according to Karma Yoga, according to the explanation of Swami Vivekananda? He says, intense activity is necessary. In a Karma Yoga, intense activity is necessary. Then you may ask Swamiji, what about renunciation, what about rest? Swamiji gives an example. Neither a man who has completely renounced is an ideal man, or a man who is completely engaged only in work is not the ideal. And who is the ideal? The ideal man is he who, in the midst of the greatest silence and solitude, finds the intensest activity, and in the midst of the intensest activity finds the silence and solitude of the desert. He has learned the secret of restraint. So, Karma Yoga is the secret of restraint of action. You should know how to restrain your power, and it's not just merely doing work. You should know the science and secret of restraint. So, he has given all these introductions, and now I come to the second chapter, the fourth in this book, what is duty? To understand, whenever I very often say this, you should always start with the question, why Swamiji has brought out this lecture, or why is he thinking about duty? Why Swamiji wants to deal with the word duty? Yaake bekittu? Why? What is duty? My question is, why what is duty? You should always start with a question. Then you will have answers when you start reading it. So, for that you need two things. One is introduction to why duty, and second part, introduction to why duty. Second thing is, you should know the difference between morality and ethics. First part is, why what is duty? Second part is, difference between morality and ethics. Are Swamiji, you are speaking about Karma Yoga, not me, of course. I am trying to explain what is Karma Yoga with respect to what is duty. And now you want to deal with ethics and morality. Why? Yes, there is a lot of connection with morality and ethics and duty. And Swamiji has extended that meaning. If you know what is ethics and morality, then you will understand the contribution of Vivekananda. Now, we have two things, Varnashrama Dharma. One is Varnashrama, one is Varna Dharma, Varna Ashrama. When you say Ashrama, we have four, Varnashrama, Brahmacharya, Grahastha, Vanaprastha, Sannyasa. When you say Dharma, Brahmana, Kshatriya, Shudra, Vaishya. So, if you are a student, you have a particular duty to perform as a student. If you are a householder, you have a particular, Swamiji deals with all this. Swamiji has no time to explain everything. And moreover, the problem with here is, we being Indians are trying to understand our own thing through English. Swamiji is explaining all these things here in English. He has not used the word Varnashrama, Varna Dharma. He has simply explained. So, when you read it, that's why you need a little bit of introduction. I will try to point out wherever Swamiji has used this Varna Dharma, Varnashrama, and Bhagavad Gita 2nd chapter, Bhagavad Gita 18th chapter. Swamiji has given the free explanations or the free translations of those things here. If you don't have this introduction, you will not understand why Swamiji has used all these things. That's why I am trying to explain this. So, when you come to Varna, Dharma, Brahmana, Kshatriya, Shudra, Vaishya, they have respective duties. Being a Brahmana, you have duty. Being a Vaishya, you have particular duty. Being a Shudra, you have particular duty according to Varna Dharma. When you say Varna Ashrama, a particular duty as a student, as a householder, as a vanaprasthin, and as a sannyasin. So now, how to link all these duties into karma yoga and attain jnana? Swamiji is now bringing this topic. What is duty? Now there is a problem with Arjuna. Being a Kshatriya, he had a great doubt whether to wage a war or to retire and to renounce. Krishna exhorted him to take up the bow and arrow and fight. But he said, Varna Sankara, there will be Varna Sankara. There will be only widows in future, no husbands for them, more of women folk, less of men, because I will kill them. So then there will be a lot of confusion, Varna Sankara will be there. Though it is better not to wage a war. Being a Kshatriya, he had a problem to understand what is duty. Forget about Jnana. Now being a Kshatriya, he had a confusion, what is duty. Now you should all have this clarity to understand what is duty. If you don't have this clarity, then there will be no yoga. Swamiji explains all this in very simple terms. He will not confuse you like me. So I always put lot of questions and make you confused. But Swamiji is not very simple. But to understand the simplicity, you should understand all this introduction. 2 days in Mangalore, yesterday and day before yesterday. Today afternoon I came from Mangalore. The whole 21 talks was on simplicity, Saralateya Jivana Dharma. That was the theme of 21 talks. Main topic was Darshanikara Jivana Sutra Saralate. So, to explain simple things, it's all very difficult. To lead simple life is very difficult. To understand simple things, to explain it simply is a greatest task. So, Swamiji is the simplest way of understanding religion. If you want to truly understand religion and ethics and morality, go to Swamiji. But if you have a good of introduction to other subjects, you can very well understand what Swamiji is saying and his contribution also. Now coming to Kshatriya Dharma of Arjuna. He had a greatest doubt. So, how to solve this problem? Being a adhikari or a spiritual aspirant, there will be one more question. Suppose, let us say, a young boy of 25, boy or girl, wants to renounce the world and to take the vows of sannyasa. But he or she has parents at home, elderly father, elderly mother, or grandparents. Many people will suggest him or her not to renounce because you have a father and mother at home. Your first duty is to look after your father and mother. Once they die, then you can renounce. Then what is his duty then? He wants to renounce. That is what Varna Dharma and Ashrama Dharma, Varna Dharma and Ashrama Dharma comes here. That's why Swamiji has taken this point. Because in West they have different concept of duty. In East, we base our thoughts on Dharma Shastra. Suppose every Veda, Rigveda, Yajurveda, Atharvana Veda, Samveda, we follow a particular Veda, particular Upanishad, and particular Dharma Shastra. For Yajurveda, Apastamba Sutra. Yajurveda follows Apastamba Sutra. Vaishakana is followed by Rigvedin, Ashwalayana. So, it depends on your Veda. If you take a pravara of a Brahmin boy who has just been, have a thread ceremony or Yagnopavita Dharana has been done, you ask Pravaranvita Gotrasya Udbhasya Yajushakadhyaye Apastamba Sutra Rigveda Shaki, then Ashwalayana Sutra, they will quote. Nobody knows what is Ashwalayana, what is the link with Ashwalayana and Rigveda. Simply they will ask him to repeat. His father has repeated 40 years, his son has to repeat for 50 years, his grandson has to repeat for 100 years. But what is the connection with this sutra? Never we have seen what is Apastamba Sutra. But we have been chanting that Ayaji Shakadhyaya Apastamba Sutra Aham Bhuva Vyuhadaye. So all these things, we have Dharma Shastras for duties. So based on this, Vedas is the base. Based on Veda, all Manu, etc., Yajnavalkya, Manu, they have formed these Dharma Shastras regarding duties of Varna Dharma and Varnashrama. Now, how to understand this with respect to spiritual evolution? If you don't have this idea, you cannot understand what Swami is saying. Then there is second aspect. If you study Vedanta Sara, Introduction to Vedanta, Vedanta Sara, there Vedanta describes what is duty. So it describes three things. One is Nitya Karma, second is Naimittika Karma, third is Prayaschitta Karma. There are two more karmas. One is Kamya Karma and Nishiddha Karma. We don't want Kamya Karma. We are not interested in any Kamya Karma now. Nor Nishiddha Karma, not to be done. Taking a liquor, smoking is Nishiddha Karma. It's the common sense. For spiritual aspirant, not necessary to tell all this. Kamya and Nishiddha. We are interested in Nitya, Naimittika, Prayaschitta. Here, what is the daily duty is defined in Nitya Karma. They give Sandhya Vandanadini, Sandhya Vandana, etc. is the Nitya Karma to be performed. Then, Naimittika, Jateshtyadini, birth ceremony, some child has born, for that you have to perform a yajna. It is called Jateshtya, Jateshtyani. That is called Naimittika Karma. Prayaschitta, you have done some sin to relieve from that sin, you perform certain action. That is called Prayaschitta. Now, concerned with the Nitya and Naimittika, what does it say with respect to Nitya Karma? Nitya Karma is Akarane Pratyavaya Doshaha. That is the Akarane, without performing that action. Akarane. You are supposed to perform daily duties. Like Sandhya, the old days they used to do Prata Sandhya, Madhyanika Sandhya, Sayam Sandhya. You are not doing any Sandhya now. Sandhya is no. But whatever comes to your lot, you are performing. Let us consider as that is daily duty. So, Akarane, if you are not performing your daily duties, Akarane, Pratyavaya Doshaha, there you will incur a sin called Pratyavaya. What is that Pratyavaya? Non-performing of daily duty, you incur a sin called Pratyavaya. I think I am clear. Am I confusing you? No. Is it clear? అర్థమవుతుందా ఏం చెప్తా ఉన్నాను మీకు? So, if you don't perform daily duties, you incur a sin called Pratyavaya Dosha. So, you will have certain doubts now. Suppose I do a particular action, I get a merit. If I do a particular another action, I may get sin. But non-performance of action, how does I incur a dosha? You have to understand it psychologically. Means, let us say, in the first place, Akarane I am dealing with Akarane Pratyavaya Dosha. Let us say, a student, Brahmachari, tomorrow he has got second PUC examination. More tensed are his parents than the children nowadays. Oh, second PUC examination, odo. So, he is supposed to write his examination tomorrow. Fortunately or unfortunately, today there is a final IPL match at 7:30 p.m. That is the time he will study. He will be busy with 10:30. So, what he is, let us say he has not completed his chapters, he has not completed his complete portions of reading all the chapters. Still 5 chapters are remaining to be read. But unfortunately, this football match, IPL, whatever, etc., that he likes most. Then if he, instead of studying, sees the match, then Pratyavaya Dosha, that daily duty he has to study. Non-performance of daily duty has incurred sin. So, being in Varna, being in the Varnashrama, if you don't perform your daily duties, you incur this Pratyavaya Dosha. If you extend a little bit, pratyavaya. We'll give a higher example. This is a low, ordinary, day-to-day activity example. If you extend it into a further in the evolution, there's one example, incident, not an example, incident in the life of Mahapurush Maharaj. One brahmachari or a Swami, novice, was given the duty, actually it's not duty, it's seva, let us consider duty for our sake now to understand. Was given the duty of preparing breakfast for Maharaj. Every day he has to prepare breakfast for Mahapurush Maharaj, Swami Shivanji Maharaj, and offer it. One day he prepared luchi. Luchi is puri. In South India we call puri. There they call luchi, maida. It is made out of maida. So he prepared that luchi and it got burnt. Then he offered it to Maharaj saying, Maharaj, sorry that this luchi got burnt. I am very much sorry, Maharaj. Please excuse me. Shamisi bidi. Then Maharaj, seeing him, he said, don't worry about the luchi that is burnt. Worry about your kapala. Because while frying that luchi, he is thinking of something worldly. It was his duty to do japa or think of the ishta or do prarthana when he is doing a service of duty to his guru. Instead, he is thinking something worldly and frying this luchi. That's why Maharaj told him, don't worry about the burnt luchi. Worry about the burn that you have in your kapala. Then he has to leave the order. Because serving his guru was his duty, he forgot the way to do that. That's why akarane pratyavaya dosha. If you don't perform in the right way, there is a psychological understanding that you will incur pratyavaya dosha. Naimittika is jati, occasional duties. Birth of child, amavasya, hunme, ekadasi, just you all perform. Upavasam, etc. So these things, these are all the basics. So these are all considered as duties. Now when I take up my spiritual life, how to understand varna dharma, varna ashrama, duties, and convert it into a spiritual karma yoga. That's why Swami has taken this topic, what is duty? That's why you need a bit of introduction of Hindu philosophy. I am just trying to give an introduction, that's all. You need to understand and know still better. Not just the introduction. This is only introduction for a lecture. But to understand, you need a bit more of knowledge of all these things. Now, this is the first part of introduction, why. Why? What is duty? Now, coming to the second question. To understand what is morality and ethics. As I heard, I have not gone into any Western universities to study, but those who have gone have told me, including our Swamis, in many of the Western top-class universities, they have a separate department for the study of ethics. But unfortunately, we don't have a department called study of ethics in India. Though we have Dharma Shastras, but these are all not studied in universities. It is studied as a Oriental Research Institute. You have books, available books. You can prepare a journal or publish an article or take a doctorate degree in all these Dharma Shastras. But there is no separate department called ethics in Indian universities. But in many of the Western top-class universities, we have a separate department called ethics where you study particularly ethics. Yanta duranta. So, now, to understand duty, you should understand ethics. Because duty comes under ethics in Western philosophy and also in Indian philosophies. I think it may be a bit boring. Have little patience to understand. Just to hear, at least you hear, that's enough. Ante chalu. So, there is a lot of difference between what is moral and what is ethical, morality and ethics. If you say, Swamiji, what is morality? It means way of life is called morality. Way of life. A good way, a right way of living, we call morality. Right way, good way, it is called morality. So, what do you mean by ethics then? Study of moral life is called ethics. Morality is a way of life. How do you live a life? A right way or wrong way of life leading. The practical side is called the morality or the moral life. When you come to ethics, it is the study of moral life. It is called, ethics is called moral philosophy. Now I think it's very clear now. Moral philosophy and morality. Moral philosophy is called ethics. Morality or moral life comes under morality. I thought of bringing a board, but you should not think that Swami cannot live without a board. That's why I did not write a board. Because for me, especially when Swami Bhajananji took us Western philosophy in our training center, he took only few classes. He is very busy, Swami, there. At the time, he was Assistant General Secretary. But he took, we personally went and requested him to take some classes. Due to his many other work schedule, he said, I will not be able to take class. And we specially went and on Sundays, we will not have classes. Only Monday to Saturday in training center. Sunday is chutti. Chutti means you have to do campus cleaning, washing clothes, etc. It will go on till 12 o'clock, morning 7 to 12. Then I personally went and requested him, Maharaj, we are free after 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Then he told, which subject do you want to study? Maharaj, you can better teach Western philosophy. All other things you can get, but Western philosophy we don't get. Then he used to come at 2:30. I have to go to every room and bring the brahmacharis to the class, make them sit at 2:15. Then inform him, then he will come. Everybody should come. Nobody should come after the class. If somebody comes, he will leave the class. He does not like students coming after the class begins. So, he will come 2:20 or 2:30 once all the brahmacharis are there. It's a personal class, means there is no schedule in training center to attend that class. It's all our personal interest. So, he used to write every word that he used to utter. He will go on writing. Whatever he says in the class, he will go on writing. Then said, Maharaj, if you do like that, we have very short time. 45 minutes, 1 hour, it's too short a time. And if you go on writing, then you will not be able to complete even 2 pages of Western philosophy. You said, naak likhle, tumi bujhbenna. If you don't write on the board, you will not understand. Hear, see and understand. That is his philosophy. So, na likhle, tumi bujhbenna. So, he will, full thing, everything, whatever he says, he will write. Then we have to see, and we also have to write. He will not tell, but he expects. If you don't write, then he will say, you are not at all a good student. Na likle, he will say, you are not at all a brahmachari. You are not fit. He is very extreme. You are not fit to become a brahmachari. That's why it is better to write. When there are some serious discussions, better to write. Though for a thing called we have our own concepts of lecture. Let us not understand lecture. Let us take it as a class. We are learning something new. So, ethics is called moral philosophy. It is an intellectual discipline. Now, you will understand what is duty. So, duty comes under moral philosophy. We will discuss whether the action taken is rightful or wrong. Because we have an intellectual discipline to decide this is right or wrong. That's why we have to study morality and ethics. Swamiji has studied all these things. That's why he is with this background he is entering what is duty. We should also have that background. In the West, ethics was studied for many centuries. By the way, there is 2-3 articles of Swami Bhajnanji. Please read. Whoever are interested to know more about this, please read. Morality and Ethics and contribution of Swamijis on Morality and Ethics by Swami Bhajnanji. 2-3 articles are published in Prabuddha Bharata many years back, 25 years back. Morality and Ethics and contribution of Swamiji to the field of morality and ethics by Swami Bhajnanji. You have a CD now, you can Google it, you can search it, you will get it. Purchase that, have that CD, Prabuddha Bharata CD. You can just browse. You can have a computer, have a laptop. That's a necessity now. If you want to study, that is the necessity. Have a laptop, have a tab, have a iPad, have a good smartphones. That is a necessity. If you want to study well, browse, download the PDF. You don't get physical books now. You get electronic books. If you are interested, you have to download from the archives, make it a separate folder, place it in your Google Drive. Suppose you are posted to Delhi, you cannot carry all the books. You have it in a drive, download it and study. You cannot carry all the books everywhere. When you are mostly traveling, people cannot do that. Anyhow, so you read that Morality Ethics by Swami Bhajnanji Maharaj and contribution of Swami Vivekananda in the field of morality and ethics. Yes, a wonderful article. You need little patience to understand. I am giving a gist of that now. So, ethics is called moral philosophy. In the West, ethics for many centuries was studied under Christian theology. It was studied under Christian theology. But later, after he says by Hume and Kant, made ethics as a separate study. Kant and Hume, etc. So, the study of ethics became a separate branch of philosophy, known as moral philosophy. Then when it became a branch of philosophy taken from Christian theology, it was grouped under axiology. What do you mean by axiology? I think you are hearing all this word for the first time. Pratham barige sunta unnaru. So, axiology, study of ethics, study of aesthetics, study of logic is called axiology. Ethics, logic, aesthetics, prakriti saundarya, aesthetics, logic, nyaya, ethics is dharma shastra. These three are grouped under philosophy under axiology. I gave a little bit of introduction when I took practical Vedanta, ontology, epistemology. If you remember sociology, when you were doing sociology, I touched a bit of this also, if you remember. So, in Western philosophy, especially Lilly, Bhajnanji quotes Lilly. He says, how does he define this ethics? The normative science of the conduct of human beings in society, in societies. He calls this ethics as normative science. I request your little patience, just here. It is called, ethics is called a normative science. If you don't understand this, you don't understand the contribution of Swamiji. The greatness of Swamiji is, he has linked Vedanta to this. But how do you know that he has linked Vedanta if you don't know what is ethics according to Western science? He calls it, Lilly calls it as a science. Ethics is a science, but it is called normative science. Science has two kinds. One is a positive science, one is a normative science. Science has two kinds, normative science and a positive science. What do you mean by positive science? Physics, chemistry, biology, which deals with facts, is called positive science. The science which deals with the criteria, standards, is called normative. Ethics is a standard or a criteria for the moral life. That's why it is called a normative science. Swamiji has contributed in normative science. When we study this duty, we will be able to know more about it. So, because you see, Arjuna had this question, whether the action that I am going to do is right or wrong. He was in need of a standard, a normative science, to define whether waging a war is right or wrong, rightness or wrongness. He wanted a standard. Krishna gave that standard that is studied under normative science of ethics. So, even in this ethics, there are mainly two theories. I will not go into detail. I will end up here. Don't worry. This is the last part of it. After that, if you are at home doing an online class, I would have given the freedom of taking a coffee. Unfortunately, you are sitting here. There is no possibility. But imagine of taking a coffee and hear what I am saying now. So, there are mainly two theories. When you say what is right or what is wrong of an action, how to decide whether a particular action done is right or wrong? There are mainly two theories. The first theory says, you see the result, the end of the action, and say, seeing the end, considering the end or the goal of action, you can say whether the action taken is good or bad, right or wrong. Here, when many in the initial stages, if you say happiness is the end or the goal of all actions, it is called hedonism. Swami deals with this in Jnana Yoga. Utilitarianism. Universal utilitarianism. It is called universal hedonism, propounded by Stuart Mill. Swamiji quotes this in Jnana Yoga. Swamiji quotes in this Karma Yoga. That's why I want you to understand this. Happiness is the goal of life. That is called hedonism, utilitarianism. Universal utilitarianism. This, what do you mean? Happiness is the goal of life. Because seeing the end of an action, we say this is good or wrong, right or wrong, bad or good. There's a second part. Of course, what is utilitarianism? If you say, greatest happiness of the greatest number of the people. Greatest happiness of the greatest number of people. That is called utilitarian. If there is a lot of influence of utilitarian, especially in West, and now even in India, India is not apart from it now. Everybody speaks of utility now. So then you come to Swamiji's. Then is it right? What is duty then? Is the question now. Second part of the theory, I did not name it. It's called theological theory, deontological theory. I did not name the technical word. You may be confused. Yeah, two theories. One is based on the end or the goal of action. Second part defines good or bad and the action itself. We are not considering the end result. We look at the rightness or wrongness of the action based on the action itself. When you come to this part of the action, how to define this action itself as good or wrong? You need a law. You need a moral law, a universal moral law. There ethics starts. Normative science comes here. You should know, Swamiji explains this not only in this second chapter of what is duty, but even in the last chapter of what is freedom. Of course, it comes here in the last but one chapter, what is freedom. There also Swamiji tries to define what is duty. There is no absolute standard for ethics. For that you should know. There is no absolute standard for ethics. It is always relative. Why? Because ethics is based on culture, on the country, the place you live. There is no absolute standard for ethics. Here, Hinduism at a particular time failed due to caste system. Because they tried to make an absolute standard for all the place. A Swami should not cross the ocean. How can you say it's absolute ethical moral law? No. They tried to extend this. There is no absolute moral ethical standard. No. It's always relative based on your culture. You need a cultural base. That's why Swamiji has contributed with respect to normative ethics, especially to the field of actions. The actions, rightness or wrongness, based on a moral law, Swami Vivekananda has mingled Vedanta with this. This is the introduction. You know now the introduction to what is duty. We are entering into the chapter, what is duty. I gave the introduction, why what is duty. Second part, you should have a brief introduction to morality and ethics in modern context, especially with Western science. That I gave brief introduction of morality and ethics with Western, started with the Christian theology. With this background, we will enter what is duty. Once I complete this chapter, I will summarize where Swamiji has contributed, taking all these ideas. I have gave just about ethics and morality, I just gave the introduction. This is just a beginning of the summary. So, you should know a lot of technical terms. That's why, to explain it simply, it needs a lot of tasks of knowing and explaining. When I complete this chapter, I will summarize. To summarize, we have to begin with Veda, Mimamsa, Shaddarshana and Swami Vivekananda, Vedanta and Swamiji. Swamiji at the end of the rope. We have the Vedas at the beginning. In between there are Mimamsakas, next comes the Shaddarshana, the evolution is the Vedanta, and Swamiji has combined all these things and made a wonderful result. He takes this. If you don't have this thing, of course, you may understand in your own light, but to understand better, you need all this knowledge. Anyhow, fortunately, let us begin the chapter, what is duty now. Now, Swamiji says it is necessary in the study of Karma Yoga to know what is duty, what duty is. Swamiji says, idea of duty again is different in different nations. He begins with an example. He says, suppose if you go and ask a Muslim, he will say, what is written in Quran is his duty to follow. If you ask a Hindu, he will say, what is written in Vedas, it is his duty. In the same way, if you ask a Christian, he will say, what is written in Bible, it is his duty to follow these things. So, but it differs according to the period and the states of life and also to different nations. Swamiji therefore says, the term duty, like every other universal abstract term, is impossible clearly to define. It is impossible to clearly define what is duty. There is no absolute standard for duty. We can only get an idea of it by knowing its practical operations and results. This is called normative science. There are two. This is deontological theory. First was ontological, theological theory. Mean you see the goal and define the action. You see the action itself, forgetting the result. Swamiji says, second part. We can only get an idea of it by knowing its practical operations and results. So, if Swamiji gives one more example. Suppose a person performs an action based on his impulse. How? Let us give you an example. After completing your Aratrikam, you are walking on the street, crossing the road, or walking on the footpath. Suppose some person has fallen and it seems to be a case of epileptic seizure. Epileptic seizure. What you say in Kannada, I don't know. Epilepsy. At least you have heard epilepsy. So he had an epileptic seizure, he has fallen down, and you feel that he has to be hospitalized, but you don't have time to. You request some second person there standing nearby him, giving a 500 rupees or a 1000 rupee note, and ask that requested person to take this person to the hospital. Suppose it is too much, then it will obstruct his brain also, epileptic seizure, he will have some problem with respect to brain. So you will request him to take to a nearby hospital and you go back home. Just then, your friend sees this and comes near you and says, yesterday also I saw this person. I also gave him 500 rupees, but he did not go to the hospital. This is a fake incident. Don't believe that man. So the action depends upon the impulse, Swamiji says. So what is duty then? The first thing is, it depends on your impulse, not on the action. First thing on the impulse. Second day, after Aratrikam, hearing Karma Yoga, you are going out and you see the same person falling with the same epileptic seizure. You don't have any karuna, you simply walk. You didn't have any impulse because you had the knowledge of yesterday saying that that man is fake. Same action repeated. The day one, your motive towards that action was different, and today your motive towards the action is different because the impulse was different. That's why duty at the first place depends on your impulse towards that action. So, Swamiji, that's why he says, the ordinary idea of duty everywhere, is that every good man follows the dictates of his conscience. The first level, so to impulse, to the word impulse, he has substituted the word of impulse and put it, the ordinary idea of duty everywhere is that every good man follows the dictates of his conscience. So, it depends on your conscience, first place. Now, Swamiji says, but hear properly, pay little more attention. But what is it that makes an act a duty? The way Swamiji explains is very simple but wonderful. But what is it that makes an act a duty? If you act in a particular way, what is it that makes that action a duty? To explain that, Swamiji gives 3-4 examples. Suppose, let us say, a man takes a non-vegetarian food, meat, chicken, etc. He is dying due to lack of food. Or he sees a person dying due to lack of food. If he does not take or does not offer a non-vegetarian food for the survival, he is deprived of his duty. He has not performed his duty. On the other hand, if a person who is purely vegetarian is being offered a non-vegetarian food, if he consumes that food, he has not performed his duty. Same actions are different perspective. That's why it depends on a good man doing a good duty means it depends on your conscience. First place. This is like Swamiji is started from a kindergarten. He is taking from kindergarten to knowledge of Atman. Nobody will do that. Nobody has so much patience and understanding like Swamiji. Nobody will. If you study all of Dharma Shastras, you will not get this much of idea. You will fall in the maze of Sanskritam, that's all. So, he gives like this, so many examples. In the last century, Swamiji speaks of a thugs. There was a group of robbers called as thugs. What was their duty? They have to kill any man who sees. If he sees a man with so many belongings, first he will rob all his belongings and kill him. The more men he kills, or men or women, the more he is moral. That's the philosophy of thugs. And then, if he says, Swamiji says, ordinarily, in a general perspective, if a man goes out in the street and kills a man, he is called a criminal. But a soldier gets his gallantry award depending on the number of men he has killed his enemy. In both the cases, it's killing. The action is same. But the perspective depends on his conscience. The first thing to understand a duty is conscience. I will stop it here. So, there are so many things. As and when time gives an opportunity, I will introduce these concepts, because speaking too much of theory, you will not be habituated to hear so many theories. At the same time, I cannot miss this complete verse. To know complete verse, at the same time, you should have a lot of background also. So I will try to harmonize theory with Swamiji's idea. And at the same time, you should not feel that Swami is making us too much bored. Sitting is also a great punishment, as we used to sit in our classrooms in our schools days. So I will try to harmonize as much as possible to make it more understandable to whatever extent I know. So we will continue this what is duty next Sunday. And next Saturday, there will be no Vachanaveda lecture. There will be Harikatha concert at 5 p.m. in the evening, next Saturday. That is on the 11th June by our Shirsi Narayan Das. Actually, this was supposed to be organized during our celebrations. It was on January 9th, but January 8th, the government sent a notice, no public functions, you should not organize any public function beyond capacity of 50, and schools and colleges were also closed for a third wave of corona, and we also had to cancel our Harikatha and other Balakasanga day, etc. That's why the same program is reorganized on 11th June, next Saturday, Harikatha Das by Shirsi Narayan Das. You can attend, it starts from 5, maybe it will go until 8 p.m. With this I conclude, and we will meet again for Karma Yoga next Sunday. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.